All right, this is the point where I do the little intro bit because I can't wait to get into it with all of you. So, welcome everyone to Faded Connections episode number 83. We just started in Lake of Kalandra 3.19 Path of Exile. Tonight is Monday after the League Start weekend, and Balor and I are eager to talk about our findings of the first weekend. And for that, we have BigDucks here and ShakCentral with us. BigDucks YouTuber, ShakCentral build guide creator, and before we get into it, just, let me know how your league start has been going. I guess. BigDucks, do you want to go first?
Sure. So, my league start's been great. My personal league start's been amazing. However, it doesn't really feel like I can focus on PoE as like a game right now. Like, it doesn't really feel like I can spend any time actually talking about like, hey, do this strategy. Hey, do this. This is working for me. This is how my build's going. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. But my current progress, I mean, I have like 5 to 10 divines. I've got most of the gear that I need. I'm still farming. Everything's been mostly fine for me, but that's because I'm a degenerate heist lover, and it is what it is. So.
What build have you been starting with for
strategy was Poco Pathfinder into endless heist, level up a little bit, do normal heist, and then transition into a dedicated heist build, like a 600% movement speed and vulnerable heist farmer.
Nice. That sounds fun. And it's like absolutely the right strat. It's okay.
What's it like to get loot?
It's nice, dude. Like chat sometimes is like, yo, you've gotten more loot in the last 3 seconds than I have the entire league. That's crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, Balor, you just said in the beginning that you were stripping your character off of stuff. Any remarks to the league start? Is there anything that didn't go well?
Look, as a build, my league start was fantastic, and it did exactly what it was designed to do. I'm intimately familiar with how to start a magic finding a Deadeye, which is in a duo, which is exactly what me and my friend ran, which is a bow lightning arrow start. We were going to swap into wands by like day 3 or 4, and we were going to be full magic find. I had, on day 1, I had not just the best venters that existed on trade, but the best 2. I had the best 2 that had come up, or that were on anyone's character in the entire league, or that were on trade. I already had both of them. I had my 10% gloves. I got 19% boots. I got my rampage belt. I had everything. It was the smoothest and most excited I'd been by the end of day 1 in quite a bit, because I had really, really good magic find gear already, and we were just set up to be blasting. Because I don't know if anybody remembers, but we were explicitly told magic find is going to be disgustingly good this league.
Amazing. It's going to be the
your
best.
magic find ready by people who clearly have absolutely no idea how loot works in the entire game, because that's couldn't be further from the truth as a straight bull-faced lie. But anyway, so as of today, I'm just sitting on all the quant gear. It does nothing. It does literally nothing because of how more multipliers work. So it's worthless. Any of your quantity gear is all worthless. It does nothing. We tried to change it into real gear, but then like the only content that we could do that was actually rewarding was content that the build isn't designed to do. It's a very one-purpose build. Like, it's very, very good at clearing juiced maps at amazingly good speed with full quantity on, but when you try and take it into tier 16 9 essence arch nemesis mobs, it doesn't do it. That's not its job. I would have told you if that's what you wanted to do before the league start, to absolutely not start this build. This is not what it does. And so I guess I just have to abandon it and reroll. So just before the podcast, we completely stripped the character from head to toe, which is I'm like super happy with. It's got extra arrows. It's got the only storm rated the only DPS storm rated Asanas mark that exists in the entire league. Like, I'd be so happy with it if the content that it wanted to run to run existed. Oh, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Though, so
I just feel like that's the theme of this league so far is like GGG selling this whole big giant thing and it just all completely falling apart because most of the stuff that they've said, like I was the most hyped going into this league that I have been in a long time. I was super hyped for 3.17. I didn't really like 3.18 just felt like 3.17 but a little bit worse. And I was super hyped for this because I was like, man, changes Arch Nemesis look like they're really cool. Like Magic Find on single target. Like we're gonna actually be able to like boss or something, like some kind of bossing. And Heist is gonna, or not Heist, but Harvest is gonna be good. And you know, the Lake of Kalandra looks like Synthesis, which is my favorite league of all time. And
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. And then it turns out to be not Synthesis 2.0, but it's kind of like Incursion 2.0, but worse.
Yeah. And no loot anywhere.
Yeah, before we go more into the no loot thing, quickly get a chance to Shaq to tell us about his league start. Shaq, how's it been going for you? Welcome.
Hey, it was interesting. Like it was a different league start for me from the very beginning because I kind of fully moved over to SSF for like a year, and I decided to join the discount league, which is like it's run by Bantix and it's a kind of a group found thing. It's kind of just like one big BPL essentially. So I really like that kind of aspect of just kind of freely giving. Like there's a ton of loot I'm never gonna use. So it's a very open, just give people what you're not gonna use type thing. And so for the first like day and a half, if you just weren't, it followed like the typical pattern of if you weren't on the subreddit, it was like largely fine. You could see like a couple of issues where somebody, one of the first people into maps was like, hey, I think Harvest might be bugged, just FYI. I did like my first Harvest plot and didn't get any life force or whatever. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. That kind of sucks. And then it kept happening like over and over and over. And so it was weird because even in a small group where we're all in like one global chat and there's only like 70 people, it was interesting to see how quickly some of those became apparent. Like, the argument that people have of like, if you just took like a couple of dozen really good players and let them test the league for just a little bit, you would see these issues right away. And you could really see that happening because it was, like I said, only 50 or 60 of us in like one group. And the majority of us weren't like racing. There were a lot of people that at the end of day one were still in like Act 4, Act 5. And even then you could see some of the issues that had become very prominent. But it was also like Duck said, it was that weird thing where I've just league started so much. Like I had a great time. Like I genuinely, personally, I'm having a blast. I'm used to SSF anyway. Mm-hmm. If I'd have known some of the issues, I probably wouldn't have started. Like I started Shield Crush, and it's still been great. I really have enjoyed it. It's super fun skill to me, but I probably wouldn't have started it potentially if I'd have known about some of those things. I probably would have stuck with either my old, just something that I've played a few more times just to push through kind of a little bit faster and smoother. But for me personally, it's been great. I have what I need, but I can definitely see the difference, even in an SSF sense, in my currency tab. Like there's a very clear difference after a few days.
Damn. That sounds so depressing to be caught up with all this reality. Basically, for me, it was I'd already peeled back from the game a little bit in the end of last league because I'm just mentally busy with like other things, and like not streaming every day has been like one of my goals now for this league, and like focusing more on VOD content and getting really into video editing again so that it flows really easily. So I played for like 6 hours, had a good time. It was a little bit, rough to fight some essence monsters in the Lake of Kalandra because they obviously not only scale up with the essence mods, but then you have the Arch Nemesis mods and you have the lake difficulty scaling up the further you stray from the entrance. So it took long, but I was rewarded with like a really good leveling amulet, which had like 4 positive stats and only 1 negative stat, just like 150 life and 70 dex at level 35. And since I'm playing like a Templar character, it's obviously perfect to get all that dex.
Yeah.
And I was really hyped to continue playing, like in the end of my first day, 6 hours. And when the first negative feedback came in on Reddit and on Twitter, I just chalked it down to like general fatigue in the player base, where like every league we get that, right? Every league we get like some doomsayers at the first weekend of the league. It's like, oh, this is shit, worst league ever. I'm leaving, I'm quitting, this and that. And mostly I think a lot of times it's people comparing like the results of their fully juiced endgame experience in the previous league to their poorly figured out strat in early game with the new league, and not giving the league enough time to, basically show where it shines. But
yeah, I started feeling it. I went a little bit longer, right? Like I think I did like 14 hours or something after league start. That's all that I could manage with being sick. But I started noticing it in maps. Like when I actually landed in maps and I started trying to progress through, like I have problems sometimes with, map sustain occasionally. It happens occasionally, but it typically doesn't feel bad until reds, right? I've had circumstances in the past where occasionally I've had to buy a couple maps into reds. I got unlucky, I feel, on map drops this league, and I had to start buying them in low tier yellows to continue at all. So I got stuck in like 5s and 6s for an hour or two. And that's not normal for me at all. Like that doesn't happen. I was at the point where I had done endless heist. So I mean, I was alking and voling and even like chiseling and using the map device on white maps. And I wasn't getting drops. So like my like spidey senses were tingling immediately, and I'm like, something is wrong. I don't know what's going on. It hasn't been like that since like 3.14, 3.15, right? And it was never even that bad in those leagues, right? So I just, it started tingling, and then I started hearing people saying, I'm not getting anything from Harvest. People are like, arch nemesis mobs are beating my ass, and I can't survive against them. They don't die. And then, it kind of just compounded into what we're at now. But then I jumped into heist and I was fine and had no issues past that.
Yeah. And the heist is mostly unaffected because it's all loot that just drops from chests instead of
correct.
Instead of monsters. But everything that's been rewarding through monster drops is pretty much gutted at this point.
That's why I think I think Grimro is farming Legion right now, right? And some people are doing like
chests.
Yeah, like anything that isn't dropping items from monsters and you like click a chest to open it up seems to have survived. That's the only loot that really exists. And on one hand, I'm like, yeah, maybe they'll buff things back. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, what if they go after the reward chests instead?
That's right, yeah. I've been having a good time in Delve.
Don't say stuff like that.
I know, but I'm so black-pilled at this point, dude. I can't. It's hard to be positive right now. Like I'm just so doom and gloom. It's hard, man. I'm trying to be positive, but I'm trying to mainline some copium, and it's just not working, man. It's just not working.
Yeah, I'm with you though. I've been pulled over the coals so many times in the last few years, and been like, oh, such a shill, always defending them, because I always see it fine. Like even when leagues start bad, and there's been quite a few leagues that start bad, right? But you look at it and you're like, okay, calm down, guys. It's been 3 days. Like everything's going to be fine. The sky isn't falling. Everybody just likes to have a bitch, and this just isn't that. It's just not that.
It's not.
The difference, the best descriptor that I have of what the difference is in the past 9 years, the base game was in such a good spot at all times that even during the absolute worst possible league, there was absolute trash. It didn't really matter, especially at the beginning. I would have played 3 months of anything for an economy reset, and even if there wasn't a league there, I would have had a lot of fun for at least the first 6 to 8 weeks, even with no new league, because the base game was so good. We don't have that anymore. There's no base game, as far as I'm concerned. If your league at this point isn't absolutely popping off, there's literally nothing.
Yeah.
I agree. That's a bad state to be in.
Basically, very similar to what I said. I was like, every league there's something that's bugged. Every league there's something that doesn't hit the mark. Every league there's some kind of problem, and most of the time I'm like, well, it'll be fixed within the first week. Like, we're playing the beta for the first week. It's fine. The problem is that the thing that's wrong, or I guess it's not bugged, since the post that Chris put out says that it's intended. But my initial gut reaction was telling people, hey, there's a huge bug, and it's just really unfortunate that the bug right now is with the most basic aspect of the game, loot dropping, right? That's what the bug is. And then not 4 hours later, Chris makes a post and he's like, no, intended.
It's fine.
Sorry. It's fine. This is fine. This is a buff. It's just like, and then the meltdown started.
The biggest meltdown for me is legitimately, without any meme at all, I will get more interesting loot playing Diablo 3 on Friday. That's
a hot take.
That's pretty bad.
Disgusting sentence. That is the most disgusting sentence that's ever left my mouth. But loot is the reason that I play this game. I don't want a boss. I only want a map, ever. And loot is the reason I play the game. And there will be more interesting loot for me to see hour on hour basis in Diablo 3 that starts on Friday.
For
you know how
weekend,
disgusting that is? I want to throw up. That's gross.
Yeah, I mean, I can share like one more anecdote real quickly. So what I did after I finished my League Start run with like 5-6 hours where I did a lot of Lake and stuff like that, is I went and redid my old item filter video, because 2 years ago I made an item filter video that had accumulated like 130,000 views, and it helped a lot of people, but it's been so outdated because Filterblade has seen so many changes. So I just I already made it invisible like a couple of weeks back, and I had intended to make a new video, and I was really feeling the urge to make videos right now. So I started with that one because I was like, I already know the concept of the video, not too much I can mess up there. And so I was trying to find footage, right? I was like going into standard endgame maps with my level 95 Devso for Cultist, and like just zooming through Delirious stuff. And I was trying to get a screen with like the no item filter selected. I was trying to get a screen full of loot so that I could show how bad the game looks without item filter. And I just couldn't get it to look as bad as I did in the video 2 years ago. I just couldn't find a screen that was completely cluttered with item labels. It was all like just little clusters next to the monsters in like super juiced content. Like I said, Delirium Orbs on, Abyss, Breach, everything. And it was just like, a bunch of items here, a bunch of items there, but not this whole completely overwhelming, unplayable kind of thing that makes you feel like you really need an item filter to play this game. It didn't feel like you really need an item filter.
I that was one of the things from Chris's post that kind of upset me a little bit, is because I think that their vision for the game and the way that people actually play it are substantially different, right? And it feels like when I go into a map, right, like they what they wanted to do is they always want better items to drop on the ground, right? Like that's always what they've said. They've been saying that for years now. They want you to drop an item on the ground, and they want you to be able to pick it up and be like, oh, and get excited about that item that drops on the ground.
Yeah. Right.
And conceptually, I think that it's a fine idea. I think that conceptually it's a good idea. It is like the classic loop, right? You kill the monsters, you pick up the items, and you use the items, they're good, right? Unfortunately, nothing that they have really done so far has hit the mark on that. They've kind of eased into it a little bit, but then they've removed them right away, immediately after we actually get it. Like, do you remember when talismans were good for one patch or like two patches or something?
That one league, yeah.
Like talismans, they're like, oh, talismans are good now, and like, oh no, people are actually equipping talismans on their character. Better just straight delete them again. And then last league, we got recombinators. Recombinators made loot on the ground good again, because you could pick up the loot and like smash it together and make a good piece of gear out of it. And then they deleted that the next league after. I mean, they said they're going to bring it back, but it's just like they're afraid of loot actually being good, and then saying that they want loot to be good off the ground. And it's just it's confusing to me, because people don't play the game like that. They kill monsters, they pick up currency, and they buy items with it. 95% plus of people play the game that way. They're not SSF players. So I don't know. It's frustrating, confusing, and strange.
Do you think it would actually like fix it if recombinators would still be around? I mean, you'd still have no items to recombinate with.
Fix it? No. Fix it? No. Absolutely not. But
Alleviate?
it would feel less bad if so say they do what they want to do, right? Like say they do this thing that's in the post that they made just now, and they're like, all right, well, we're gonna make it so that higher tier base items drop all the time, and like bosses are now gonna have consolidated loot. Say they do that, right? Without recombinators, we get more items that end up just being one chaos. So if everybody is now dropping all of these basically good items, they're not influenced, they don't have crazy modifiers, they don't have eldritch implicits, they don't have any of this stuff. This is the actual gear that's good in this game. If bosses start dropping, oh, I got a chest piece that has a big life roll and 3 resists, but so does everybody else, and it's not worth anything. So until we actually are able to drop items on the ground that can even theoretically compete with these big giant items, it's just not going to happen. Like we're not going to make it there. But recombinators relieve that. Like they relieve that a little bit, right? Because you can do some cool stuff with them. Those generally pretty good items can become very good items, but it doesn't fix it by any means. Like not at all. So I don't know.
Yeah, Shaq, what is your verdict on all of this? You've not been saying a whole lot.
No, it's a like I said, it's a weird thing for me because I'm coming from SSF into like a group found league. So to me, it's like I can clearly see that the amount of items that I'm getting is not anywhere near what it's been recently. Like there's a very obvious thing at a baseline. However, the availability of things that I need has gone way up because I have 70 people as like an item pool as opposed to playing in SSF. That being said, going from a league where like the excitement of the expansion really died off quickly in the sense of what you can do with the expansion, because in 3.18 it was like you have the Sentinels to figure out, you've got recombinators, you've got all of these like things that interact either with how you're running through the map. There's strategy and when you place down your Sentinels, when you do all this stuff, and the crafting options are absolutely immense. Like people were having podcasts a month or two in where people were still figuring out new stuff. The what's his name? Iron vs. Wild was making posts about recombinator usage that were like borderline books on the subreddit. And this league, there's just nothing going on. Like right now in recombinators, you have thousands of words over multiple posts on like little niche things about how to use them. And then in Lake of Kalandra, you literally are having a discussion about, is the optimal strategy to just skip the first like 5 difficulty things as you run through the lake and then start fighting things at like 5 or 6 or 7 difficulty? Like the optimal way to handle the league content right now is
skip
most likely not to run it and to wait for it to get fixed. And if you do run it, balance out like, where do I even start? Because it's probably most worth your time to just run through the first 2 or 3 difficulties and not even touch them. Like that is crazy.
And the bit that gets me the most there, you touched on it before, like they want items to be good, but also crafting is a huge part of what makes things interesting. It's why lastly, I've got a bunch of friends who normally play for like 3 or 4 weeks, who played for like 2 and a bit months, right? Like last league was so good. We got a lot more playtime out of it. They had an opportunity for very, very, very interesting stuff happening this league with those mirror things where you get to put in your own items. But then they decided somehow we came from recombinators, which made the most disgusting stuff I've ever made, to here's a thing where we could mirror stuff that might double stats, but you can't use it on fractured items. You can't use it on synthesized items. You can't use it on influenced items. You can't use... So
you can pretty much only use it on amulets
basic
and rings.
stuff.
Yeah.
So like the only thing I'm interested in making is like, could I make a +4 amulet?
And good luck with that.
That's it though. That's the whole thing. That's the end. Even if I do make that, there's nothing else afterwards.
It just
another +4.
Well, +4 with 150
feels like they're
life.
afraid. Like I feel like they're just terrified. Like I feel like Chris has nightmares of seeing that clip from Impy and his group of people where they just like exploded with a bunch of loot, and seeing these posts on the Reddit and stuff like that. It just feels like they have he has nightmares at night, and he wakes up screaming because he sees these crazy items that people are getting too easily, and it's like I don't understand it. Like, it's the fun part of PoE. The fun, like, killing random monsters is not that fun. The part that's fun about PoE is gearing. The part that's fun about PoE is like getting your character to be more powerful, living the power fantasy. And then the second part that's fun is doing the hard stuff after you've gotten there, right? Like doing the bosses and Ubers and stuff later. Like, gear your character up and then fight the stuff at the end. Even in the most powerful state that this game has ever been, the vast majority of people never even see the final bosses. They don't even ever get into the same zone as them. So I don't know why they're so afraid. I don't get it. Like, they're afraid of people just maybe having too easy of a time with their game. I genuinely don't understand it. I don't know.
Have you guys all... that's always super valuable. Thanks for giving the input and talking about your experience. But has any one of you watched Snap's video about the drops? About the full party farming with MP? I think
is that the one where they were talking about them like quitting the league? Basically, like them being done already?
Almost basically, word for word, it's the one they were complaining about, the same thing I was bitching about yesterday. How quantity works.
Yeah, basically they're investing like 150 chaos plus per map and getting at most maybe 50 out of it. Yeah. Like when
it was
when,
like 220 investment, like 30 profit or something like that, 30, 40 between the 6 people running them.
When the big juicers are deciding that the best way to make currency is to do chaos recipe and level up gens in simulacrum, not a good thing. Oh. It's not a good thing.
They went group heisting for a while too.
That's also a really bad sign, because that's like, I know that I enjoy heist, but you know, I think it was Firegrass in his little like oddly timed little post that he made, his twit longer that he made, because I think he was already writing that and he just happened to post it at the same exact time that the thing went out. But in his twit longer that Firegrass made, he even said one of his points towards the end was, it's so strange how hardcore and softcore have kind of like combined now. They've met at a point, because previously, years ago, you wouldn't find a softcore Andy. You wouldn't find them dead playing an ability like Spectral Helix, dude. Absolutely no chance in hell. It would not happen. But now, if you go and look on PoE Ninja and softcore trade, look at the percentage of people playing Spectral Helix on like day 2 or day 3. It's ridiculous the amount of people who are willing to sacrifice because they have to, playing a build that mechanically feels good for one of the least mechanically good feeling abilities just because it's good. Like, I don't know, man. It's so strange.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up the Snap video because if there's any doubt still in the audience or like anyone thinking that we're just super negative Nancy's, and I mean, because that's what would be my first idea. But like when it comes from one of the most legitimate like groups when it comes to optimized endgame farming, then we can be sure that there's something wrong with the game. And I assume you've all read the post that Chris made, and that one seems also a little bit weird because there's some sort of like doubling down on what is happening. There's not like they're not fully admitting that there's problems, right? Like they're saying that, yeah, people are experiencing this, but this is because that, and basically saying like this is all fine in the grand scheme of things, and we're going to give you a little bit of a concession and give you a little bit better loot from some of these things, but largely it is how we intend it to be. That's like what I read out of this post, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's my gut instinct was just the loot stuff is obviously bugged, and then I see that post and they say this is intended. I didn't even know what to say. I was shocked to see that post.
So just to be I feel like this is interesting. This is coming from somebody who is planning on quant farming, but this is how it affects everyone. Just to be clear on how like loot dropping works and why it's so bad, why this change happened, just really quickly. There are a few levels everything goes through that are completely separate when it rolls how loot drops. And each one of them is separate in the way that it's a more multiplier. So it's a more multiplier the same way our gems are, right? So that every single one of them is separate. Like your first thing that you get is just the base quant that exists, 100% of everything, right? Just boom, this exists. Then you get the map quantity. I'm not sure about the order, but with more multipliers, it doesn't matter. So that's irrelevant. Then you get the map. So the map quantity, any fragments you put in, any passives you've taken on the tree, all of that, right? Even it says 150% quant, right? That's a more multiplier. So that's the first one. Then you get league mechanics, then individual mobs, then player quant. So league mechanics come in third. So I don't know which ones have exactly what numbers, but up until last league, the numbers were along the lines of Beyond had 2,800, Alva had 11,000, Abyss had like 6,000% quant. This is what I'm talking about, like percent quant. And, you know, exact numbers, I don't remember off the top of my head, and I wasn't able to find them before the podcast, but we were talking most of them were in the thousands.
Right.
A few of them were above 10,000. That's the bit that changed. And that came from the several thousands up to above 10,000 to 200 to 300. Then at the end of that, for the juices, you get two more things. You get party quant, which was separate, and then player quant on your character, which was all separate. And everyone who plays PoE is going to be pretty familiar with what happens with more multipliers. And then what happens if you had an 11,000 more multiplier that became 300, which is what we got. Also, it's worth noting that if you completely strip all mobs from a map that are league mechanic mobs and exist only in the base game, in a white, unrolled map, on average, you'll have about 600 monsters. So 60 to 70% of your Alcan Go monsters in a map were league mechanics of one form or another, all very well done league mechanics that have been polished over the last 10 years, but they're all in the base game to the point where over half the mobs in your map were all league mechanic stuff. That's where all the loot went. That's what went missing. Never in the patch note, never written, never talked about. In fact, Chris on the podcast or on the announcement told everyone to go and get their magic find gear ready, which tells me he's got no clue how quantity stacks in this game because it's the opposite of useful. But yeah, not mentioned anywhere. That's where it went, just so that everyone like mechanically gets what's happening and why there is no loot and why it's everywhere.
I mean,
yeah, and that's the part that upset me the most. It wasn't mentioned. Like it's actually so frustrating and infuriating when, like, I almost feel like a clown. Honestly, like I almost legitimately feel like a clown. I made videos. I talked to people on stream. I told them like, hey, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. Be ready for this. Be ready for this. And then I feel like a clown because I sat there and I defended it. And then it all just fell apart at the last moment. You know, these are completely undocumented changes. We had to find out about harvest through data miners like 2 hours before the patch actually launched. That's how we found out about the harvest crafts that were missing. Like when they said that they were going to remove a couple inconsequential harvest crafts, like filler crafts, I didn't expect they'd remove the most important craft that exists.
Which one?
The big one is the prefix suffix keep craft. Those are just gone.
That is huge. But the bigger one is that all the reforges are gone.
And all the more reforges,
likely?
Yeah.
Right.
All of those are gone.
You think they're still there at a glance because it says reforge with chaos, but it actually just says reforge with fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no fire more likely. That makes it roughly 28 times as worse.
Yep.
You would have to do that craft 28 times to get one version of the free one you got last week. It's so bad.
Not only do you have to do it 25 to 30 times more to get that, but you're in most cases getting 10 to 15 times less crafts per harvest done. So you're literally talking about harvest. Basically, to engage with it, you have to do harvest, the mechanic. What even is that? That's hundreds of times more just to get the same amount of crafting done if you wanted to make up for the crafts that were removed.
That's crazy.
The best solo self-found hardcore racers in the game are considering quitting permanently over the harvest change. That's how bad it is.
I've always been a big advocate of just delete harvest, but it was always assuming that some of the crafting power would be distributed to other systems instead of completely removed.
Right.
That seems rather weird. And it also seems so weird, especially because one of you said earlier, I don't know whether it was BalorDucks, but one of you said that you see this massive disconnect between what GGG wants the game to be played like and how it's actually played, and that they're unaware of that. But I felt in the past that they've always been pretty aware of that dissonance, of that difference, because
I didn't say that they were unaware of it. I just said that there's a disconnect between what they want and what the players actually
and then
do.
You're saying that, but I am saying that in the past they've always been very aware of that, because I remember Chris repeatedly talking on podcasts about the tragedy of Marvel Heroes, where the game just lost 90% of their player base overnight because they massively nerfed mobility, and Chris has always said that was the reason why they're not overnight nerfing mobility, even though they very much disagree with how fast the game has become, right? And now that they make such a massive change that basically kills off 90% of their player base, it's crazy that we got to this point where they actually make a change that is akin to that could actually destroy their game in the same way that Marvel Heroes went down. I mean, to be fair, with PoE, they always get another chance next league, right? If there's one bad league, most people come back next league. But I don't know how many people come back in a year from now if they're continuously disappointed.
The problem, and I will start personally worrying, if I'm going to talk as a content creator or anything else like that, I will start personally worrying when people are no longer upset. That's the point where I think that stuff is bad. Because right now,
you've given up, right?
Yes. Right now, people are very upset, and that shows that they care about the game. That shows that they're invested. That shows that they want the game to be good. When people stop caring and we stop, that's why I always defend Reddit's ability to talk shit, to be upset, to complain. I always will defend that to the end of my days, right? Because the moment that people stop doing that is the moment that the game is dead. Because as soon as they stop caring, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be anymore.
My biggest concern right now is that this league, I'm not going to be able to pick up enough extra shifts at my real life job to make all my bills, because streaming is not going to make me any money. We struggled on day 3 of a league to reach a daily sub goal on a 14-hour stream. On day 3, this doesn't happen until month 2 normally. Here's the thing. I'm going to huff some copium here. We've been complaining a lot, and I want to try and be a little bit positive in the only thing that I believe. I do believe they have time to fix this before it becomes a killing problem.
Oh, absolutely.
I also think in the past, if I try and be less upset, if I try and move out of my upset brain right now, right? If I try and move out of my upset brain right now and think about it, most of the time, they've never made a mistake this bad, but most of the time when they make mistakes, which have never been this bad before, even when they've doubled down on them, if they get a visceral, horrible reaction from everyone, they have been willing to flip entirely in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
They've been willing to be everything we just tried to do to you didn't work. It's not what you wanted. It's the direction we thought we wanted to go, but it didn't work and no one was happy with it. And they have flipped and gone in the opposite direction. Sometimes even overcompensating. It is the first week of the league. So as long as, like I said, as long as we're all still upset and we're all still vocal about it, there is still time for them to be like, okay, we tried this thing, everyone fucking hates it. We're gonna have to fix this now. Right?
So,
like there's still time for this.
I have a question for all of you. I'm curious. Do you think that post that Chris made, I don't even know that it was really Chris that made that post. It could have just been under his name because he likes to tank for the community, right? Do you think that post would have released as is if Bex wasn't on vacation?
No.
No. No.
Yeah, Shaq, go first, please.
So I'm gonna taper this off a lot because this is a big passion of mine. I'm literally right now. I'm moving into game dev for a different place, in a community manager role. Good God. I think it would have been way better if his laptop was taken away briefly. This is really rough, like on so many levels, because I think, man, there's so many pieces to this. Like, I think that people don't, there's typically the outrage, like right after a league, when you would see like within the first hour, people just going nuts and complaining about, I'm dying too much, all of that. That's where a lot of us in general are like, maybe play a better build, take your time a little more, learn more. That's not the issue here. Like, it's a combination of the arch nemesis. I'm looking at his post right now again, and it's frustrating me. The arch nemesis and the harvest sections are like just a lack of understanding of what's going on in your own game. And the item drop one, the item drops is a separate issue of like just a complete lack of communication that like Duck said, that's what makes us as like content creators just feel like absolute, he put it good. I feel like a clown for being like, just wait, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's going to balance out. You're in the early, no wonder you're not seeing any items. You're in Act 6. And then I get into white maps and I'm like, I go through a whole map and I fill up half an inventory. But the part in Harvest, I mean, I think Tarky and maybe Ziz mentioned this. There's a piece in the Harvest in where is it? In the last paragraph here when he says, players also notice that occasionally a Harvest encounter can result in no life force dropping. This was because, in an effort to reduce the number of clicks after an encounter, the life force from beasts below tier 3, like the wording of that is so clearly. It's like a passive aggressive.
Yep.
Like,
you wanted less clicks, right? You wanted less clicks.
Yeah. Like the logic of it doesn't really make sense.
I'm not the only one who felt that.
Oh no! As soon as I read that, I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize we were fighting on a personal level, but okay. It's just it's so rough. Like, it's just from a PR standpoint. If it was trying to be funny.
1/5 of a second thinking about Harvest and like less clicks tells my brain to say, shouldn't all the life force drop in up to 3 separate stacks, 1 stack for each color at the end of the Harvest plot, not from the mobs? Like, 1 stack, one purple, 1 yellow, 1 whatever the third color is, blue. Like, that's the most obvious thing. What do you mean?
Or just not drop at all. Why doesn't the life force just get sucked into the ground into your thing like metamorph organs? Like, there's so many ways
make
you could
it
have
not
done
tradable.
that. But to write it that way to me is really rough to read. Because
the worst part about that note is that at the bottom they're like, by the way, here's an MTX box and a Kirak pass in the most tone deaf, most not getting it post they've ever done. They ended it with 2 MTX shills, and I'm like, oh man, this is not the time.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, like the thing about the Harvest part, right, is that they had to say that they managed to somehow impressively turn something that I think it was a minimal percentage of people were upset about, the like sometimes harvests don't drop any life force, right? People were more upset about everything else. But they managed to take that, which was, in my opinion, a complete like non-issue for them, right? It's something they could fix very easily, and just turn it into one of the biggest negatives of the whole post, just like taunting the reader. They're just taunting them over literally nothing. Like, this is why people are coming up with these things like Chris is just upset because we memed him about the close your eyes and exalt thing. This is what fosters that like animosity against, like these kinds of posts. Is it's like they're just passive aggressive, like you said it correct. It's like they're just passive aggressive and and just so tone deaf.
And this is what's going to become like, this is already, you can see how this is already going to become another one of the meme things. Like in 3 months or 6 months, when they reveal a new league mechanic, the second they reveal any quality of life feature in the future on their Twitch chat, the only thing that you're going to see is just a wall of people going, reduce the number of clicks in a bunch of exclamation points. That's the only thing you're going to see. Like, this stuff just doesn't play well, and it's a combination of tone deaf and passive aggressive that's really brutal to read.
I do like the optimism that people will still be watching those. Is that a little harsh? I'm sorry.
It's savage, Balor.
Man.
Yeah, because I just made the decision. I was so hyped about 3.19. I made the decision like a week before that I'm like, all right, I'm going to transition into full-time, right? I'm going to move towards full-time. and
oh no.
And I'm super, super glad that I had the like wherewithal and the forethought to be like, all right, let's not jump all the way in. Let's do a real gradual, slow transition to this, like I'm going to take baby steps. Because when I saw this post, I was just like, I didn't fuck up too bad. I'm okay. Because if I would have just told my boss, "Hey, I quit," I would have been worried right now. To be honest with you.
Boss
Like,
would have called you to laugh about you on the phone.
Thankfully,
you're calling your boss back 2 weeks later. So about that, you feel that position yet?
Yeah. Thankfully, he's a good guy and he's also a gamer. So I mean, it would have been okay, hopefully, but I wouldn't have liked to have that conversation with him. So yeah.
Yeah, I think just reading that post, the thing that's just is frustrating is it's like the multiple angles of the first half of the post is like they don't really understand. It's almost like they're just disagreeing with the people who are actually playing on what the issue is. Like, I understand, and this is what I always tell people is like, it's their game. They get to make it however they want. If you don't like it, you don't have to play, but they get to do what they want. And when you read the things like this, like the whole section on Harvest and Arch Nemesis, like they don't understand. I just don't understand how they don't get what's going on in the game. We have someone in the discount league who every time he runs a red map Harvest, he just posts at the end a thing with all of the life force that he got, and he's getting like a couple hundred, like enough for a couple of crafts after red harvest. And they're saying basically they're going to give you more without affecting the yield at higher tiers. Like, that's not even close to solving it's not even on this. We're not in the same atmosphere of what the problem is from the people that are playing and getting the things and what the people who are making the game think is the problem. And it's Tarky said it in his basically response to this, his video, when they talked about reducing the life on the Arch Nemesis mods. Like, it sounds good, but it's not the problem. The problem is when you have the combination of the Arch Nemesis mods together. He made the point that if you were to remove the problematic combination of mods, in some cases you could double the life of some of the Arch Nemesis mods instead of reducing it, and it wouldn't matter. The issue is how they combine together, and it's just a lack of understanding. And then as you go further, it's the biggest issue is the item drops. I mean, we've harped on this a ton, but just the communication part is so brutal. Just not having any indication in the patch notes or anything that is leading up to like, hey, this is gonna happen. Just having it happen while live, it just feels so bad.
There was no communication leading up to the league release actually that was indicating that you guys be prepared. There's going to be significantly fewer items. We knew that there's going to be fewer uniques and stuff like that. But, I mean, this is like a completely different order of magnitude in terms of change.
Yeah, and I know this is getting into like weird conspiracy theory at this point, but I mean, we're here. Like, I was kind of saying this, but in my mind, and this is unfortunately me giving GGG the benefit of the doubt here, right? Not that they're just screwing up, right? Not saying that they're screwing up. in my mind, if you guys know what anchoring is, I was thinking that the only realistic like explanation I can think of in my mind is what they were trying to do is they're trying to slowly morph the game closer to what PoE 2 is going to be, so there's not this giant shift that people are just like, why is the game so much different all of a sudden? And what they did was that they want to nerf drops, right? That's something that they might want to do. They might want to slow down the game. They want there to be less items on the ground. They want there to be more impactful items. And what they did is they pulled it way back to maybe where they thought it should be, just to see what happened. And then if people were very upset, then they'll pull back a little bit, but we don't get everything back. And it's anchoring is the term that they use in like business decisions, where it's like you start the point where you want it to be, so that arguing afterwards and negotiation afterwards is more in your favor.
Yeah, you overshoot so that you actually reach the goal that you wanted to reach.
And it's a little conspiracy-like feeling, you know, it just feels like they're like min-maxing like the community and stuff like that. I don't like to even have those kinds of thoughts about PoE. I don't want to have to think that way, but that's where my mind jumps when I see changes like this.
Probably one of the most favorable ways to look at it at the moment, though. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
You could be way more upset and assuming more ill intent, but like I've been thinking about this. They have really competent players at GGG. They have people who raised the HCSSF ladder and are doing really well, like with the GGG in their name. Takes most notably, right? And
it's the confusing part.
Aren't those people consulted when it comes to A, making changes like this, and then B, when it comes to addressing changes like this and the community feedback around it? Are they not going to those players who are like actually playing at a high level in the company and be like, hey, dude, we have this huge, disconnect between like our design idea and what the players perceive. Are we so off with our idea, or are we actually in line? Do you think it's the players who are wrong, or are we wrong? And that seems to not have happened at all, that like inner dialogue. And in general, it feels like they're like most of the competent team members on GGG are working on PoE 2 and they're operating PoE 1 on like a very, very small skeleton crew. Possibly even like new people who are just learning the ropes of like making PoE.
It genuinely makes me wonder what's going on, because everything that I've heard, if you've listened to Octavian recently, right? He just got into GGG, and his comments on the staff and the people that he's worked with is like, man, these people are amazing. They're so good at their job. They know how to do this, they know how to do that. And that's everything that I've ever experienced from everyone that works at GGG. Like,
or everyone who's ever been there.
Yeah, I know people meme on Chris, right? Chris is fantastic at what he does, right? The fact that he can keep up with the things that he does, and the fact that he is so good talking to people, being able to speak on stage, understanding the finances and everything in the business, fantastic. Absolutely. Like, I wish I could be a fly on the wall in some of these meetings and just hear what happens, because it doesn't connect.
Also, this is the same experience that I and everyone else had when we had ExileCon 1 too. Like, meeting all these people in real life. Everyone there was amazing. Everyone there was smart. Everyone there had the finger on the pulse. People understood what was happening. When I started to talk about like real intricate things, like everyone in the company knew what the fuck was going on. And that just doesn't compute this group of incredibly talented, passionate, smart people who know tons of stuff put out. This doesn't make any sense.
It reminds me a lot of what you hear about like the what happened at Wizards of the Coast with Magic. Like, I used to be a huge competitive Magic player, and they went through a period where there was a huge amount of hiring really successful tournament players. Like, people would literally they'd place top 8 at a pro tour, and all of a sudden they'd be like, well, I'm going to work at Wizards. And then you get like 2 years after they had this huge hiring of all these professionals, and you're like, this is going to be incredible. The game's going to be at like an all-time high. 2 years later, I was actively selling all my cards to get out of the game because the balance was the worst it's been in Magic history. And it's just, and from what people have said, this is one of those things where it's like people have kind of leaked details about what it's like to work at Wizards, where they were like, basically, you're just told to work on your one individual thing, and nobody's allowed to like, kind of give ideas out in anything other than what their specific role is. And this is a thing where I'm very hesitant to speculate about like what's going on in the inner workings of a company I don't know anything about, but it's so hard to believe that with the quality of not just people, like that combination of being so good at their jobs and so good at the game that they make in a complete vacuum, they have so many insane players. It's so hard to understand how this, especially from a testing perspective, like how this gets out like it does. I just don't get it.
And the base feel of the game is better than it's ever been, right? The feel of the game, not the actual experience, but the feel of the game, right? Like the art and stuff for Kalandra is super good. The story seems really cool. Like the concepts, the ideas, everything that they wanted to do, it all seems really cool. It seems like everyone did their jobs well. It's just like there's this little voice in the back of the people's minds that's like, keep on with your job, and there's just it's like it's pushing them off to the side in some weird horrible direction. Like I don't know where the cancer is, where the tumor that needs to be like pulled out is, but there's something. It has to be. I can't imagine why so many creative and intelligent like Shaq was saying. I can't imagine it, right? There's no way they don't see it. There's no way they don't see it. I don't know.
On that note, I want to quickly say that, yeah, the art is cool, the dialogue is cool, the lore, the stuff, but also most notably, the music is so refreshingly different while still hitting the basic, like, same buttons, pushing the same buttons in my brain, but, like, it's definitely distinctively different from what Camille did all the time, even though it has some elements of that. Yeah, they have a new composer.
They have a new big sound guy, right?
Yeah, they have a new main composer. And I don't know whether it's because Camille is working on different projects outside of GGG or whether because Camille is like mostly occupied with PoE 2 nowadays. But yeah, I'm really hyped about that because there's some of the old soundtrack that's not in the game anymore by Agio Hutchins, which I really miss. And like the new guy seems to capture like a little bit of the vibe in that direction. Like a little bit more of the rhythmic battle-y stuff and the gritty dark, I don't know, like the wilderness in PoE in D2 back in the day, and like those sort of things. Whereas like Kamil Omanyanovsky did mostly the triumphant like fanfare, like with brass and everything, orchestral shit. And like what I really miss is like that dark sounding ARPG, Alone in the Forest sort of vibe.
Yeah, like one thing I noticed, because I went back for a little bit last league when I was kind of in like a break period. I played a little bit of Median Exile, which is a Diablo 2 mod.
Yeah,
and I had the music on, right? And I was in Act 5 of Diablo, and I realized, and I was upset with myself that I never realized this before, but the music in Act 5 is a symphony. It's all the same symphony, and it moves between parts of it, right? It's the same overarching song. It's a symphony. And I realized, I'm like, this is why I remember this music so perfectly and why it has so much impact, is because it's literally like a classical symphony that was made for this act, and it moves and the song changes and it like reflects what's happening to you at any given time. I'm upset with myself that I never noticed it before.
Yeah, the Ascendant theme is similar to that, where like I think a lot of video game music is just constantly like just constant sound all the time, and I think it's the Ascendant theme that literally has times where it'll go 2 or 3 seconds where there's just no sound, like it'll fade out and then it comes back in on the same theme from before. But it's like he's just, man, they're so good at music. He's just not afraid to really play around with the fact that it kind of reflects, like you said, what you're doing, where like you'll go a couple of seconds without some major action on the screen, and then all of a sudden there's big flurries of action, and the soundtracks are just, man, they're so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. But Path of Exile.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like at least we agree that there's some elements that they're worth being excited about.
Sure. And there's lots of good people at GGG. They all seem super competent. They all seem like it. It's so unfortunate that I can see how this could be such a good league. Like I could see how with just these little tiny but meaningful tweaks that they could make, that they could just own up. I don't want to do more. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't want to do more big community podcasts with Chris and all of that. It was cool. I don't think it's necessary. Genuinely, I think there's enough feedback and enough people, and I feel like it was literally just the community like trying to just like use Chris as a stress ball was the entire time of it. Sure, there was some good conversation that came from it, but it doesn't even need to be public at this point. Everybody knows what needs to happen. It's very, very obvious. Just do it. You don't even have to do something better. Just make it what we had before.
And I'd imagine how much more rewarding the lake would be, by the way, if it had itself its 11,000 quant rarity that like really good league mechanics had. Just that on its own, and we'd be in the lake having fun.
Yeah, what is y'all's first experience with the lake? Let's get into that a little bit.
Conceptually cool, and no reason to go in there after you've done it once.
Mm-hmm. I have been saving all my lakes though with this like copium hope that they patch it, because like in theory it's a really, really great and fun mechanic that actually looks really fun, and I enjoyed the gameplay loop of running it and also building it. Both were really good. It's just absolutely not worth running. So I'm just going to tab full of finished lakes, just going, we got to fix that, right? Because like those are starting to stack up. Like we'll be running lakes for 2 days straight if they fix it later this week.
And did you guys run into a Beyond tile on one of those lakes yet? Have you done a Beyond tile?
Yep.
Like at high difficulty?
Yep. I did a difficulty 10-1, fought a boss for nearly 5 minutes after the boss of that map died in literally 1 second. Yep. I fought the whatever Scourge boss for nearly 5 full minutes, and I have a grand total of 1 tainted blacksmiths and 1 tainted armors. That was my effort for 5 minutes of gameplay. It's awful.
Which are trash now, by the way. Have you guys seen the post about tainted currency?
On day 1, we took tainted jewelers into standard and then used 45 tainted fuses and never hit a 5-link on a 6-socketed item.
Okay, that's another level of bad.
6 times in a row, it didn't go above a 2-link.
It's like I was talking about this earlier. Like anybody who knows anything about probability, you know how hard it is. You know how hard it is to hit like 3, 4, 5 50-50s in a row. It's insanely difficult. Mm-hmm. And now it feels like it's like a 20-80 is what the chance is. So the only useful metric that I could even consider in my brain for using these like a tainted fusing is you use the bench to force it into a 5-link and then hit it with a tainted fusing and hope. And I don't even know on average if that's I don't even know on average if that's going to be better than just using the 6-link like 1500 vols, 1500 fusings. I don't even know if it's going to be better. Like it could on average, maybe.
Well, I mean, if they're so bad that they cost almost nothing, possibly, but it really depends on the prices. It's like a simple equation. But that's
as far as the late goes, like leveling, I actually felt like a lot of times on League launch, I'm really slow to maps because I play in SSF and I just kind of take my time and enjoy it because I don't feel the need to like race economy wise. So I like kind of exploring the league mechanic on day 1 while leveling. And I maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is all one thing that I've gotten wrong, but I thought when I first went in there, the first time I ever put together like a lake and went in, I want to say it was like Act 2. I was so confused because I put it together. Like I was playing Steel Skills on my way to Shield Crush. So I was excited because I think 2 out of the first 3 zones or whatever were physical. It had like the hand symbol. It was like skeletons, whatever. And so I didn't know enough about the league mechanic yet. I was like, I was wondering, does that purely mean when you set these up, it's going to be like fighting monsters of that type? Or does it also influence the reward type? Like if I'm playing like Cold Dot, do I want to stack my lake up with a bunch of cold things because it's almost like the cold delve nodes where they're going to drop cold items. I was like, that would be really cool. And then, so I go in and the very first reward chest I get has an iron ring that has an added fizz to attack mod, and I'm like, maybe it works. Then I do a cold one, and it drops a percent cold damage wand in a cold zone, and I'm like, okay, I got it. This is sweet. You're going to basically take whatever type of damage you want to do and also need to hyper build your defenses against that, because that's how you're going to kind of churn through items that have like your type of stuff on them, which, you know what, would be really freaking cool, but it's not like that at all. And I just got totally baited by like my first couple experiences in there.
Damn.
It should be what's possible.
Themed reward types would be awesome, but it's just not.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it while leveling because it did give me it's for the same reason that like I run the Bestel's quest in Act 6 and stuff, like for getting jewelry and little upgrades, it was fine. But after a while, it was just like, this is not really I'm like just not seeing much.
Sorry for the interruption. One quick sidetrack. I just saw something here on screen. What the fuck is that, Balor? Did you just... Okay, is that something I missed? You can have rogue exiles now occupied by essences? 7 essences?
Oh, it's the only fun that I've found in the game. My stream title yesterday was I found the fun. The only fun that we've managed to find is memories. And I keep having to clarify when I say that, I don't mean memories like remember when the game was fun. I mean like the master memories that exist, which ironically, they're memories. So the only bit that's like fun left in the game is what the current masters remember happening in the past. If you go run those maps, they're fun.
Oh, that's so ironic, dude.
So many layers.
That's all an elaborate joke, dude. Oh, man. All right. Okay.
Out of season April Fool's joke. I'm still hoping. I'm still hoping that's what this league is.
Oh, God. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about it like that.
I do want to hit just slightly more on those memories, by the way, because if anyone hasn't run them, definitely get into running them. Not all of them are super profitable. I didn't lose money on any of them, so you can run any of them. You will turn a profit on everyone. The profit is not great. This is not a profit incentive round thing. Okay, I'm just saying they're fun. The gameplay in them is fun. It's the only one left. But these are all horrible memories. And when I say that, I mean our masters are like greatly embellishing and over remembering things is the theme of it. And so they'll be like, oh man, it was a breach, but the breach was so large, it covered the whole map, I swear to God. And then you go in, like, the entire map is an active breach.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so they're, like, really embellishing in their memories. And, like, it is quite fun. One of them, really cool. You become the Harbinger. So when you walk in, you become blue and glowy, and you're the Harbinger. You lose all your MTX temporarily for that map. Like, you're the actual Harbinger. And then there's like a % chance on kill to spawn a Harby pack. And it's like a good percent. It's like 3 or 4% on kill.
Oh.
But like you kill like 100 mobs, right? Like there's a pack every screen. Oh. And so there's like plenty of Harbinger stuff around. And like, if Exalts were still worth money, that would be super profitable. But like I said, they all made money.
Yeah.
You can run them all without losing.
I didn't realize how intense those got. On second thought, I have no notes. This league is perfect. That sounds really good.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Divines versus Exalts so far either. That's another decent topic, I guess.
Let me quickly recap my first experiences with the lake, because I did my first lake in like Act 1, and I went in, and one of the first things I saw was like one of the boss of the basic tiles, the like fire or cold or lightning or whatever, was just an invasion boss. And I was like, okay, that's really like typical GGG, just reusing old stuff. But then the invasion boss like was instantly dead. Like they didn't have any HP scaling whatsoever. It's like they just the same invasion boss HP as like the old balanced invasion bosses. So like pretty much like instantly one shot. And I was like, okay, that seems a bit lazy, but the league mechanic itself seemed intriguing, right? And I was like, yeah, it's not rewarding in the first couple of things, but you know, I'm not even in maps, right? I'm just in the acts, so you know, maybe I was just unlucky, and it's probably going to be better later. And then I got super lucky with that leveling amulet that seemed pretty good. And overall, I was actually trying. Like, I was, despite a little bit of a disappointment, because I was hoping for like Synthesis 2.0, and this league is more like Incursion 2.0, right? But still, it's like a little bit cooler than Incursion in the way that, you know, you can sort of custom lay out your sequence, rather than it being like a yes or no question every time you get to visit a room. With Incursion, you actually have a little bit more agency and a little bit more interesting interactions with the tablet before you get to run it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about that right now. The one where I got the good amulet took an awful long time to run. And between that and the beginning, the first one thing I wanted to say is like when I completed the first and the second one, it was fully cleared, like one monster or two monsters left, like all of the bosses killed, and I was like, I don't have any portal scrolls. Why does it not open a portal? How? What? And do I have to log out and I have to walk back all the way and stuff? And it took some people in chat to point it out to me that you actually have to press the league button, and then you get to click a button that you can leave. Yeah. But the game doesn't bother to tell you that. And I was like, okay, how is a new player going to manage this? Like, I mean, the league interface is actually kind of cool because it shows you a little mini map that's like rotated 45 degrees. And
I know this isn't relevant to hardcore players, but as like people were talking about how it would be really nice if especially if you happen to have a lake that goes in multiple directions. Obviously, it's not ideal, but if you do have one, having some kind of indicator of like which zones you've opened the chest on. For me,
yeah, absolutely.
I just want it to track which zone I've last completed, so that if you die in soft, I've only had I think 2 or 3 deaths this league, but one of them was in that was it Beyond in the Beyond one that I had that was like difficulty 10 or whatever. I got all the way to the end of that zone, which they're winding. They take a while to traverse through all those zones, and I died, and I wanted to go back in and finish killing that boss. And because you just always start in that one original room. So if there was any way to come back in even remotely closer, like it took me longer to navigate my way back through 10 or so of those rooms than it did to finish out the actual betrayal fight after that. So I know it's a pretty softcore specific thing, but man, that travel time in there, just it barely was worth it. I almost went in and went right back out. And with the rewards, I probably should have, but
death portal is the way.
Yeah. It's kind of absurd because, like, I was actually just thinking about this, but the amount of time it takes to in high tier maps, the amount of time it takes to create one of these little mirror tablets, right, is like what, like 15 to 16 maps, and it's like if it takes us 15 maps to create this. Should it not be giving us the loot worth of like 15 maps worth of a league mechanic? Like, think about how much you got from Sentinels in 15 maps, right? Think about how much loot and just items and power was created in 15 maps of Sentinels just for clicking a button. Nothing special. You just click a button and do some extra stuff. In any league going back, right? Wrong, you get 2 choices per. Oh yeah, so maybe at best it's like 7 or 8 maps, right? So
you also get some choices that don't put monsters on tiles. All the tiles need to be occupied with monsters, and you can add empty tiles. That's also an option. So like probably more like 10. I don't know. But
yeah, so around 10. And I mean, I guess it's true that you actually do get 10 maps worth of loot at this point. But but I mean, but still, it's like
that's not what you meant. Yeah,
how did it just reinforces that they knew, they had to have known. Like at this point, it's like it just nothing feels correct. Nothing.
Well, I mean, potentially, like at the top end, the amulets and rings you can get from the lake are really like intriguing and really like powerful, right? It's just,
and I'm glad I'll be able to see Reddit posts about them. So I mean, that's
cool.
Yeah, just thinking like the thing with them being mirrored and unchangeable after that, like outside of putting your own ring in there and like hoping that you don't have too many mods bricked, just at a baseline of the rings that it offers you when you just create rings, like past like a league start character, yes, you can get rings with like I can get a ring that may have 70 more life than another ring would have. But like look at like a cold dot character or any spellcaster that's using like Mark of the Shaper and needs their other ring like required to be an Elder Ring. You're never going to use one of those. You have to toss in a random Elder Ring that might brick. Anyone that needs a Curse on Hit ring and has anything else that needs to be done in the other ring slot. People like Balor that are using Venters. There's so many cases in which it does not matter how good the ring is. It could have like the absolute just every single thing roll the plus stat doubled whatever the highest like tier 1 roll would be, and you still just can't use it because you can't modify it beyond that.
On that note, is that actually possible? Like, I've seen like 5 positive and 1 negative, but like,
yeah,
is it possible to get
like
6 positive?
Yeah, it's really rare. I've seen 1.
So I've seen a few 5 positives that only had 5 mods.
Yes,
I haven't seen a 6
all positive. Okay, well.
Yep.
Yeah, so all positive, but it was missing a mod. Like
I've seen 1 all positive 5 as well.
Yeah. I've seen a few of them, actually, but never a 6. I haven't seen a 6 yet. There might be one. I haven't seen one.
Because the question that obviously I'm asking myself here is it like a 50-50 or like X% chance on a mod basis or per mod base to go positive or negative, or is it like does it pick from like a random like a table of outcomes that you could get like 5 and 1 or 4 and 2 and 3 and 3, and it can never get, in that case it could never get 6 positive. But I guess we'll see by the end of the league. We'll have found out if there's still enough people playing to actually find it.
I was gonna say.
But yeah, the whole Divine Exalt topic. What are they now? Like I've not looked at the prices in a while, but like talked about it earlier in chat. Like 10C per Exalt and 120.
Exalts are like 11, and Divines are closer to 130 right now. Like it depends on if you're trying to buy or sell. But yeah, right. Divines are closer to 130, and we're what, 3 days in? A little bit over 3 days in. So that's higher than Exalts were last league by 20 or 30 chaos, I think. But that's not really my main concern with it, with the whole like Divine Exalt change. I don't know about you guys. Conceptually, I think it's a cool change. Yeah. Conceptually, I think it's cool. I really, really wish that they would have just made another currency for metacrafting and just let us have both Exalts and Divines as something that we could actually use on gear without having to suffer. I wish there would have just been another currency, because like if Divines get up to the point where they're what? So the trade window is locked at 600 chaos. So if Divines get up to a certain point and they keep climbing and keep climbing and keep climbing as the league goes on, because right now you have to imagine that Divine prices probably aren't what they should be, because no one is really like getting any currency, right? Like the economy is not healthy. It's not the normal way that it should. So
you're saying they should be higher in chaos because people should have more chaos, and therefore like there should be more inflation and you should get higher prices for chaos already? Or are you saying they should be cheaper because people are speculating?
Sort of. So I personally think, oh, my normal stream just died. But anyways, I sort of think that if the economy was healthy, they'd be at like 160, 170, 180 by this point. But I think the economy is not healthy because of all of the changes that we've already talked about at this point. Yeah. I don't think the economy is healthy as it is right now. Like I think that people are very scared. Like I'm playing Heist, and it's hard to sell the stuff that I find. I'm finding like build defining, meta defining uniques and alt quality gems and pieces of gear, and it's taking so long for them to sell. It's taking so long for them to sell, longer than it should at league start. These things should be, I should be getting whispers like this upon even putting that item into the window, and it's not happening. So it's like the beyond that, there's a bunch of other problems, but like the point I was trying to get at was that if Divines get to the point to where they are above 300 chaos, it immediately just becomes a nightmare to even like trade them or do anything with them, right? And if they fix the loot drops, I could see it happening, because you can only trade one at a time then, and then we're gonna have to do this weird like okay, well, give me 200 chaos and like 40 exalts for one divine, and it's gonna be a nightmare. I'm not looking forward to it.
I think they'll only go up to about 300.
I think so as well. I hope they don't. I hope they don't go above 300, because if they do, it's just like, how do you even trade for them at that point? How do you use them on your gear?
Literally, the reason that I'll only go to 300 is purely based on how inconvenient it will be to trade them at above that. Even if they could have a market value above 300, I think they stop there purely based on just everyone gets annoyed. And it's like, I don't want to do that.
Well,
Yeah,
I guess,
because like, go ahead.
please go ahead.
Oh, I like I said, I conceptually like the idea, right? Like, I was thinking today, I was talking with Chad, and I'm like, well, I like the idea of, well, I find a cool cluster jewel, right? And it's got 3 modifiers on it. I'm like, oh, I could spend 10 chaos now and slam it and hope to get something cool. Conceptually, that's really fine with me, right? Like, I'm okay with it. But now I have to think to myself, I'm like, well, for me, I don't really have to experience this problem. But if I want like a good Ashes of the Stars now, I mean, it's going to be 3 times the price as it was before, maybe, for like a really, really good one. And if I want to sit there and try to heaven forbid you use a divine orb on an item now, when people start doing that, the price is just going to once they start getting deleted from the economy, it's like.
You've just described the entire game currently, by the way, in that one sentence. Conceptually, it's a great idea.
Yes, that's how I feel. That's exactly how I feel
right now.
Yeah,
conceptually, this is great.
In actuality, they have just completely. It's so scuffed, and nothing is working. Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, the idea, I'm sure,
super
is
happy.
Yeah, conceptually I like it as well, but like I just don't see it work out right now, especially if exalts stay as low as 10 chaos, where I'm really not sure whether that's, speculation based, because people are like, oh, I want to get rid of my exalts and trade them into divines as soon as possible because they're going to go up later, and I want to, and everyone wants to sell their divines and get chaos so they can buy gear for their early finds, and no one wants to actually use the exalts. So I'm not sure whether they're going to go up, and in which case they fulfill their role, but I think their role was supposed to be somewhere in between chaos and divines, so that it's easier to trade for divines, right?
hopefully, I mean, we'll see what happens. One of the hardest things to predict is the economy.
Yeah,
you can make like guesses, and you can get like little pieces, and everybody can see a little bit. And if you're really good, you can see a decent amount. But who knows at this point?
What I'm wondering is whether they'll still go up because people right now are just trying to get rid of them, or whether they'll go down because people already have used them for the uses that they have, which are the early high bench crafts, right? Like the top tier flat increased fizz, the top tier increased spell damage, and non-chaos is chaos and stuff like that. And whether people
talking about the price of exalts?
Yeah. Whether the exalts are still going to go up or whether they're still going to go down, because like I don't know at which point in the league we are. Like,
personally, I think they'll hover until some big brain content creator shows us how to make some crazy, like, insane gear with exalts, and then they'll like shoot up a little bit. Like, you guys remember the price of the Eldritch currency when it first was introduced, and how it was really, really, really low, like surprisingly low. And then the next, like, by the end of the league and towards the start of the next league, it does have some to do with how hard it is to obtain it, but how the price drastically shifted once people knew how to use it. So, I mean, exalts have been around for a very long time, so I don't think it's going to be as aggressive as that was. But I think once people like get out of that idea of exalts being gold and they're just like the gold standard currency that you use to spend to buy other gear, once people start to undo that, like the trauma sets in and they're good and they undo that in their brain, we'll see the price change and we'll see people use them more. I almost used one today.
It has been a very long time since any like quote unquote average player has been able to use an exalt on anything, right? Like, like that's not, I would never suggest that a casual player slam like most things ever, right? Until now. Now you absolutely can.
Mm-hmm. So I mean for mission accomplished. The patch is good. They did it.
Well, in parts, it's not all terrible. I hope it's the conclusion that we can arrive at. But
Slam that
it all
Exalt.
hinges on that very core system that currently seems to be very broken. Or at least like changed so significantly that it's impossible without other changes and changes in your mindset and your expectations to adapt in the current game.
Here's a question for everyone. If they literally just reversed the quantity rarity change and then obviously added a quantity rarity bonus to the new league mechanic, as well as, buffing it up because that always happens, would the whole game instantly feel better again? Is that really the only core problem?
I don't think it would feel good again. Like, I don't feel it would like immediately be like 3.17. But I think that people would more so just be feeling like, oh, I'm just not kind of feeling this patch. It wouldn't just be this like absolute mayhem, right? Because right now, game just feels fundamentally broken. Feels like there's some little cornerstone piece at the bottom of the Path of Exile building that has just been yoinked out, and the building is just going like this currently, and we don't know whether it's going to fall or whether it's going to stay. But there's so many other problems that I personally see with the game that I would like fixed, like buffs, build diversity, changes, give us more stuff to play. Like these are all still looming problems that were at the forefront of my mind going into 3.19, and now they're like back here essentially, because it's like there's bigger fish to fry now. I had all of these big giant problems looming in my brain that I'm like, well, how am I going to overcome this? What are we going to do? And now it's just like, all right, that's out the door. The game doesn't work right now. Can't even think about that stuff. So
I've seen the most ridiculous explanations posted by someone on the Reddit where they were like, well, they're giving us fewer divines, so there's more pressure, so you can't divine as many items. So they're like, they might as well give them fewer items as well.
True. I mean, why not at this point, dude?
Yeah, for me, that's the biggest issue is like the item change is a result of something that was completely, I don't know what even the word, it wasn't really secret. It was just straight up not communicated that this was going to be changed. This is like, that to me is such a fundamental thing that breaks the trust of players. It makes us not, like going into the next league, we're just, this is going to be the first time where I'm assuming that I just can't trust what's in the manifesto or the patch notes. And that's been an issue that's kind of been like a slippery slope with a lot of what Chris has said in public podcasts. Like I think Ducks mentioned that a bit ago about Chris maybe needs to stop being on podcasts and stuff, because personally, when I hear certain things, I know just in the times he's been on there, the amount of times what he said has been corrected by the other devs in the room with him in stuff like the Q&A with Ziggy, all that stuff. It really makes me feel like I have a tough time. It's not that I think he's actively lying. I just think he doesn't know. Like there's no way for him to know as many things as he's asked and answers. And going back to the item changes this league, just the idea that something so fundamental to the game, for anyone who's joined in the last hour and a half, go back and watch what Balor was saying earlier, describing how the item quantity and rarity works. It's so fundamental to an action RPG that's all about loot. It's like Duck said, there's no other issue that exists until we actually have things in the game to use and drop and find.
Absolutely no understatement to say that this is the single largest change that has ever happened in PoE's history.
Yeah.
This is actually the largest single change that has ever happened, and it's what we just weren't told. We just weren't told about the biggest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with Shaq here when it comes to like the communication and such that we get from GDG. I understand gaming communities can be absolutely menacing, horrible people, right? I understand that can happen. I know that like Bex, for example, has dealt with a bunch of shit that she has there's no reason she should have had to deal with any of that stuff, right? Being like a community like head and stuff like that. And super unfortunate. And I hate it. I hate that that's the way that things are, but it is the way that things are. And Chris has to step up essentially and be that tank for the community to just take all the backlash. And I'm wondering if this is what Nick is. I'm wondering if he's being brought up to be the next guy to like be on camera and talk to people and do things. Because I've been wondering for a while now why they haven't hired a person whose job, their job, is to learn the game and talk to people about it. Like that's their job, nothing else. I've been wondering why we haven't really gotten something like that in a while. Because I know that Neon is absolutely one of the most knowledgeable people about this game that exists in the world, right? Dude knows more. Dude has forgotten more about this game than most people know, right? Dude is absolutely mega mind.
But he doesn't knows more in his sleep than I do, and I've got 20,000 hours. Even in sleep, he's more knowledgeable about this game than I am. Like, it's insane.
But I can't fault him for not wanting to interact with the community sometimes. I absolutely cannot fault him, right? Like, I get it. Like, the community is rough sometimes, and gaming communities get rough a lot of the time. I'm sure you guys have dealt with it. I've dealt with it a lot in like being a streamer and all that kind of stuff. Just people being just downright just evil, right? Like a lot of the time, just super, super mean. And I get it.
That, but 500,000 people.
Yeah, it's like I try to not take it personally because I know at the end of the day, it's just some random person who's upset. They had a bad day at work. They're coming home and you're an easy target. I get it. I don't take it personally, but it doesn't matter if you don't take it personally. When you have 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people constantly being in your ear, giving you all these like little bits and like jabbing these little tiny itty bitty needles into you, it builds up. So I wonder at what point that they will replace Chris as the person in the front who talks to people. Like you guys remember, this is the most unfair example ever, but you guys remember Ben Brode, right? Like you remember him, right? The community leader of Hearthstone from back in the day. Do you remember him?
Yep.
We need like if PoE could find a Ben Brode, it would fix so many things with talking with the community, dude. Like dude was amazing. Super insanely knowledgeable, very charismatic, good with the community, good with communication. But, you know, finding things like that is like finding a unicorn. So it is what it is.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable. I've seen in the chat people brought up Octavian a couple of times. Do we actually know what role Octavian is going to fill in at GGG?
No, I don't believe you said that at all.
No clue. We might never know. Look what happened with Arl.
Yeah.
True.
Yep.
He's just working on stuff. Who?
Yeah. Like guy who made POV. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy who made Path of Building. I mean, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but when they hired Arl, you guys thought that they were going to make him the POB guy, and they were going to make him be like make it a main feature of the game and like put it all together.
Yeah.
And
people went so far, they thought it was going to be him. Then they were going to hire people that maintain the wiki. Like it was going to be everything was going in house.
Yeah, like that's what I thought, and I don't know. I mean, I'm maybe it's a good thing that never happened. Nothing against Arl. I know almost nothing about him, but like with all of the stuff that with all of the like stuff that GGG has on their plate at this point, maybe it's better that we just have random big brain community members doing this stuff, because it's like, I don't know what would happen if we didn't. Imagine if like Local Identity and all of those people didn't continue doing what they're doing. The game would fall apart so quickly.
I don't think we're that far off given Local Identity's tweets lately.
Oh, he's upset. Like I've seen he's upset, and if we lose him, that's a big problem.
I agree.
Imagine a world where Neversink is like, I'm done with PoE.
We don't deserve Neversink.
I'd rather not, thanks.
We do not deserve that guy.
Tonight.
Oh,
I don't want to think about that either. We absolutely do not deserve that man. Like, dude literally made an entire new coding language. A whole new one from scratch for his filter system. Like, I don't even know what else to say about that. I don't want to think about that.
The whole game falls over without Neversink, man. We can't.
His filter is what should be in the game, right? It's literally like.
Well, they tried to hire him, but he was like, "I'm not moving to New Zealand." So now they're doing a preferred partnership sort of thing with him, where like Filter Blade is integrated with the game, and you can use Filter Blade to upload filters to the console versions and stuff, and save them on your profile. But he specifically didn't want to get hired.
I hope they keep him around. I hope they keep him on the payroll. Whatever it is, if they have to hire him as like a contractor, whatever it is, I don't care. I hope they keep him, whatever, on the payroll.
Isn't that the conspiracy theory we're going with? That's like what Catmaster said. The idea is no items drop, so you don't need a filter anymore, and then the goal.
Never Sync is the mega mind behind it all. He's the one orchestrating. He's the one pulling the strings. Little did we know.
Yep.
But,
oh, that's good.
But yeah, it's so painful. Without all these third-party tools and stuff, the game would absolutely fall apart immediately. And I hate being this doom and gloom. I really do. I don't like being this upset. I don't like being, but I feel like I have to. It's almost cathartic to a certain extent. I don't want to be this doom and gloom, but I need to. I need to, right?
With our
both for me
particular
and for the
group right
community.
now, I'm pretty sure it all comes from a place of love, and I'm pretty sure we'd all be much rather sitting here praising how great the League Start weekend has been, and how much we're enjoying the league. I think that's all a podcast that we would have enjoyed much more. But sometimes you got to talk about what you got to talk about.
I would have liked to talk about my spell slinger lightning conduit meme build that I was going to make. I would have much preferred to be working on that instead of whatever is going on right now. We don't even know. We're in limbo still. Does anybody get those vibes? Like, Rue showed up in my chat and was asking for me to rate the league and stuff like that. I immediately was pulled back to 3.15 instantly, right? I was pulled back. You remember the streaming meta in 3.15 where it's Cute Dog was doing charts, ranking all of the different things like streamers and stuff like that, and all. God, it was such a toxic, horrible meta, but nobody wanted to play the game, so that's what streaming became. And it's already kind of feeling like that's starting again. And we're 3 days in. 3.
Yeah, I've always historically been the person who's everybody calm down. I have to stop myself typically from being too hard on the people giving feedback after 12 hours. That's always been my position, is relax. Let's get through League Start weekend. Maybe play a build that doesn't rely on 6 uniques and a brand new skill. All of that. I'm still at the place where I'm really enjoying the game on my own. I am fully aware that a large part of that is probably my personality is very inclined to an SSF playstyle anyway. So there's big pieces of this, the whole Divine Exalt discussion. I just sat that out because I have no perspective on that. I'm using the Divines and Exalts that I get I always have. But when it comes to the piece of this, that's the complete lack of transparency, where if I told a friend exactly, if I had a friend that wanted to League Start with me, play PoE for the first time ever, and I'm okay, I'm playing in group self-found this league, or group found, whatever it's called, come play with me, and I explain what the game is like, and then they join on day one, and they're this is nothing like what you described because of a change that went completely unannounced in the patch notes. That's where I just shift fully, and I'm I don't know how it's not that piece of it is so beyond indefensible. It's sad. This is the first time I can remember being I'm not very happy after 3 days in a league. Usually I'm one of the things I almost always say is I'm always having the most fun I've ever had in PoE, and I would still think I maybe this is the first time I've ever even said maybe. I think I'm enjoying myself, but I understand why so many people aren't.
Yeah, I mean,
we're at the point where I'd be embarrassed to ask my friends to try out PoE. That's where we're at.
Imagine you planned out a whole League Start with friends who aren't usually playing, and you're okay, we're going to be able to afford this item at that point, and this and that, and this is our power peak, and then we go into this farming strat, and we're going to make that and that much currency per hour, and then the entire plan falls apart because the game just works fundamentally different from how it worked before.
Yeah, we have a friend that we've been trying to. He tried the game probably 3 or 4 years ago, and there's a couple people in my old guild from back when we used to play trade together, and every league for like 3 years, we just bombard him the week before league launch with just, you got to play, you got to play, you got to play. And it's mostly a joke. But then when the league starts and we find nice items, we find like basically whatever we find that's good, we just constantly send him screenshots of like, you sure you don't want to try this out? This is really fun. You sure you don't want to try this out? Like, there have been 0 messages sent to him this league because I don't even know what we'd send. Like, it's just, I can't tell him like, oh, this is the league to join. Like, you got to come over and do it. I just can't do it this league.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Rough.
Pee-wee is just in a sad spot. I really, really, really do hope that we get some kind of positive communication, but at the same time, I'm almost scared to hear what GGG has to say. Like,
well, after that post, I'm
yeah,
not sure
it's
what
like,
to expect.
I feel terrible because I feel like Bex's vacation has been ruined at this point. Like, I'm sure she's losing her fucking mind right now, and it's like,
I hope her phone is off and she knows absolutely nothing.
Yep.
That's what because she felt compelled to make a post on Twitter, to make a tweet saying, "Hey, I'm on vacation. I can't respond." She felt compelled enough because she was getting spammed enough that she had to do that. And I mean, it's not her fault that the league got delayed and her trip was, at a different time. It's like, so to anyone listening, leave Bex alone and let her have her family vacation. She's got other stuff to deal with. But yeah. I hope that we get some positives. I just hope we get something, dude.
I quickly wanted to bring this up. I don't know whether you've all seen it. The ultra widescreen support has been broken, and that's also not been announced or like in any way. Like, just people who've been playing in ultra widescreen all of a sudden couldn't play, and then there was this post in the bug forum where the community team responded to the bug report and said, previously, it was possible to manually set the aspect ratio to be very short and wide, allowing you to see unintended amounts of the level at once. A limit needed to be set because of server distances. The maximum aspect ratio currently is set to 21:9. This is the widest that we can currently go before we start hitting the cutoff where entities and effects vanish. We're looking at being able to increase this in the future. Was accidentally missed from patch notes. We're very sorry for that oversight. And understandably so, this has caused a lot of people to quit the game as well right now, and a lot of people to be super upset. Because if you just bought like ultra widescreen to play PoE on, and then it just doesn't work on that, and produces black bars.
My question is that I know that they said, right, that stuff doesn't spawn at a certain like distance out, right? Who was harmed by that? Where was the harm being done? Was there any? Well, server load. Okay, so they were loading those people, but they've minimized it down now to the point where the things were loading anyways, right? That was the harm being done. So from what I read from what they said, and I could be wrong here, correct me if I'm wrong, but the server could only show stuff to a certain distance, right? Like, it could only show out so far. So by people having a wider screen, did stuff actually show up in that extra super far distance?
Yeah.
Stuff was still showing? Okay, well then that kind of makes sense.
Stuff loads about 2 full screens away from you. Okay. So widescreen people can just see further.
And I always found it kind of strange that they even allowed something like that. It was always weird to me that, because it was like the one little tiny bit of pay to win that I ever felt was in PoE, like when we're actually talking about, like, spend a bunch of money to get something that makes you better.
Well, I basically wouldn't call it pay to win, but it's like definitely as close as it gets to cheating in the game.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's always weird to me, but it's just another one of those, like, is this growing pains of them trying to get us the patch notes early? Like, is this growing pains of PoE 2 being too much of a focus and they can't get patches out properly? Still biting off more than they can chew? Like, I mean, it feels kind of like cringy and nerdy to even be like trying to make up conversations about, oh, this company that makes our game, like, let's think about the inner machinations of what's going on between the people. But it's just like, I don't know anymore, It's like, my life is pretty invested in this game. I know your guys' lives are pretty invested in this game. we've got thousands, hundreds of thousands of people whose lives are relatively invested in this game. I don't know. It's very, very strange to me. And I would like more communication as long as it's not communication like that post.
Yep.
Yeah. The widescreen stuff is like the only thing that I see is like Catmaster was saying, if you've bought like an ultra wide monitor and weren't aware it's going to happen, I guess I'm sorry. Even then, it's like it's like a physical, like out of game exploit kind of. I don't know. Like that's a piece where it's like it's hard for me to feel bad in the sense of you can't see as far as possible. I feel bad if it like bricks your ability to play because of the monitor you have, but I have no feeling of like sadness over I can't see the entirety of like a map in one screen. I don't know. That's a hard one for me to. I try to be as empathetic as possible. That's a tough one for me.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, it's just super strange to me. All so many important things were missed. And it makes you wonder. I don't like to wonder this, but it makes me wonder if they were purposefully missed. I hate the fact that I even have to think that because I greatly respect GGG and the people there. But like, these are big nerfs. These are big nerfs that I feel like anyone could tell how impactful they would be. Look at people who barely even play the game. They can log in and they can see how impactful this is. So it's like, people were less upset personally with GGG, and I feel like there was a lot less damage done to reputation in 3.15 because they told us up front, they were like, yo, we're nerfing everything. Everything is getting nerfed, and you're going to love it. This is a buff. And now in this patch, the big stuff was hidden. And it's...
Here's the worst part of that, what you just said there. There are only two options. Either they knew that these changes were the biggest changes that would ever happen and chose not to tell us, or they didn't know.
There's no good outcome.
Those are the only two options. Which one's worse?
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Which one's worse? I don't know which one's worse. Is it worse that they knew and hid it from us, or is it worse that they didn't know?
Stupidity is the better one, I think. Like that's the one that I would prefer it to be, but it's not the one that I think it is. Judging by the fact that there's a mystery box attachment at the very bottom of that post, it's hard to think of it any other way.
Yep. It's a bad time when we're all hoping it's incompetence.
Yeah.
That's a bad. That's a bad. We're actively hoping for incompetence.
Yep.
And we just had a conversation about how we know all of the people at GGG are not incompetent.
Yeah.
Like we know that there's a building full of very smart, very passionate people. So it's unlikely that it is incompetence because they are not an incompetent group.
Yeah, that's a really depressing thought. Thanks for that. But that's where we are.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
it
hopeful.
completely sums it up. It's like basically the conclusion of the entire podcast almost. There's after this realization, there's really not much else to say other than to wait for what the next move is that they give us.
Agreed.
I mean, I could now ask, what are you still like doing for the rest of the league if they fix it? Like, what kind of builds would you hypothetically like to run? What kind of things are you excited about getting? But really, it all hinges on what the next piece of player communication is that we get from GGG.
We can still speculate. That's what PoE players do best. Look at what we're doing right now. We can't speculate about the game, so we're speculating about the company. I mean, this is how we work.
Circle of life, yeah.
I mean, my plan is to heist until I have enough money and go try my meme build. And if by the time, I'm just going to heist until we get some kind of communication from GG. And if the communication is super negative, I'm going to take a break, reconsider my life choices, and move on from there. If the communication is super duper omega positive, business as usual.
Makes sense. Any hopes, ambitions, anything from you, Shak?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep doing what I do because it's there's very little of my own goals in most leagues that are affected by this, other than just seeing a lot less items overall. Like, I'm still gonna continue working on trying to make that, like, this to me is almost, I'm trying to view it as positively as I can. So to me, it's almost a positive, just purely in the sense of it makes me more incentivized to push even more into trying to assist people with that onboarding process, because that's really what I'm passionate about anyway. And that's like, so when it comes to everything from the guides that I try to put out to just generally trying to help as many people as possible, that now it, like, I don't love the feeling that it feels like every league lately, I feel like it's becoming a more and more pressing issue where I'm like feeling like the ball is being dropped more and more on the new player onboarding experience. And so I just continually feel the need to push more into that space to try to help people out, because it is absolutely brutal. So that's what was focused on before and what I'm going to continue to focus on. Personally, I'm going to try to get, progress as far as possible, but that onboarding experience is brutal. And now if there's less items too, it's a tough thing, but I'm trying to spin it as good as I can. Just keep going.
I guess that's a healthy attitude. Yeah. I mean, as long as it's yeah.
I try not to go too far overboard, but this is tough. It's tough, this league.
Yeah, I went the other direction with the new player thing. I saw the writing on the wall, and I'm like, because you probably remember my content used to be a lot more new player focused in recent time, but when those changes came through in like 3.15, 3.16, and they basically like what is Hailrake? By the way, why do we have this weird AI turret in Act 1 and then it just never shows up again? He doesn't do that like elsewhere, and we don't have any other mobs that are like that. Can you imagine a new player starting the game, getting to Hailrake, and he's literally just all over the place, right? Like completely, it breaks my immersion even to fight that guy. And now it's only Act 1. They kind of did Act 2, but then they've just kind of casually forgotten, oh yeah, we're going to redo the acts, but never mind.
Yeah. Actually, never mind. Yeah, that one's really disappointing as well. I was really looking forward to it. Same as I was looking forward to hard mode. I mean, we essentially...
What do you mean?
Yeah, we got hard mode in the game, but that's not the that's not the way that that's not the way I expected it. Yeah, Balor, what is it going to take for you to come back from D3 after the weekend?
I hope that I'm just having a very negative overreaction and that my emotions will calm down, and there'll be patches this week that make me not want to play D3.
Amen.
That's where I'm sitting. I want to be overreacting and not actually have anything to worry about. And just by the end of this week, there's 2 or 3 patches in, and it's like starting to look good again. That's where I'm sitting. That's what I want to happen. That's what I hope happens. I'm just gonna huff copium for the next few days, and we'll see.
Pretty much the same here. I mean, the thing is, like, I already had like a little bit of a independent from the league and the community feedback. I was already peeling back a little, and I was like, okay, not playing as much PoE these days as I used to in the last couple of years, because I'm mentally just somewhere else at this point. And then when the feedback came in, and it turned out to be, okay, there seems to be something seriously wrong. It's not just people reacting negatively as always. I just felt less and less motivation to actually get back into the game. But right now, when I played a little bit before the podcast, I was having fun. So I'll try and get at least into maps and see what it's all about. But I definitely hope that they give us a big patch that makes the game all cohesive and fun, and maybe add some top rewards on the lake at the end that really makes people look forward to running those. I feel like it's okay if the lead mechanic is lackluster at mid-range, but it definitely has to be rewarding at the top end more so than mapping. And it should also, I think it's a really bad decision if they don't make it rewarding at the bottom end. Like, I don't know whether it's just an effect of the uniques being far less common in general, but I've not had a single leveling unique despite doing all my my lakes in the first half of the game. Like, I didn't skip them, right? Like, the only thing I got was a red beak that I instantly vendored because it doesn't apply to my character, and B, didn't receive any buffs. But like all the things that were in the list of buffed uniques that I was actually looking forward to getting, possibly, I didn't get.
If you want all drops come from Arch Nemesis now. Like regular ones, like you have to kill Arch Nemesis res while leveling if you want to get a unique.
Oh yeah,
now.
I do that all the time. Yeah. I'm actually one of those weird leveling players who once they like put a single hit on a rare monster, they can't skip it anymore. I need to commit. I need to down that fucker.
Oh yeah, I do that with zone bosses even when I'm in a hurry on day one.
Yeah,
irrelevant zone uniques that just don't do anything or mean anything at all, and I stop to kill them every time.
What's the Act 6 version of the ledge? Is it called the Ridge? The one right after Tukohama? I can't skip. I don't think I've ever skipped them before. I don't think I've ever done it. I can't do it.
Wait, you do the
lightning
wheel
roller guy?
Yeah,
that's the worst one of all of them.
I know. That's what makes me want to kill him
every time. I have
if
no
there's
interest
one
in that creature.
area boss that I skip always, then it's that one.
I know like the one time I ever got I got one shot by one of those projectiles one time, and I was like, oh okay, so it's personal now. Like I think that's more of like the long time lifetime sports player in me. Like he killed me once, and I was like, he's gonna die 1,000 times now. I can't stop.
Let me never get on your bad side.
But I do. It has been really cool the moments when you get like these explosions of whatever specific loot type happens out of an Arch Nemesis mob. And I'm very positive that part of this is the not playing in Trade League, where a lot of the stuff that's dropped to them largely would be vendor trash in Trade League. But like for me, I had one Arch Nemesis, I had an Abyss rare that dropped 2 6-links for me, one of which was a Thicket Bow, so I now just can do Toxic Rain like end game immediately. I've had a couple that have dropped complete garbage, but I've had some that have dropped like 4 or 5 items with all white sockets. Like those little moments are really cool, but I don't like the fact that it now feels like the loot that you do get is so spiky like that. Like you'll play for 20 minutes or a half hour, get one big batch of drops, and then it's like you're just waiting on the next one for that. And it's cool, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just feel like it's really important for like new players or people who are just trying out the league to go into the league mechanic and to get something from the first time they enter the lake. They need to get something that's at least memorable, that at least serve them well for a couple of levels. Like ideally something that, really impacts your league launch, that, impacts your first 20, 30 levels. But at the very least, like a weapon upgrade that is so good that you're not going to change it for an act or two, right? And that's so important to lure people, not lure people is the wrong word, to convince people to sell the league mechanic to them, to be like, oh yeah, this is actually cool because it has potential, and I'm excited to do it later on because then I'm gonna get even better stuff. But if you go into the first one and you like get like a handful of rares and they're all like relatively trash, I could totally see why you wouldn't want to do any more of the lake mechanic until you're in maps.
And that's what I did. I did it once. I experienced it at like level 12, and I was like, oh, okay, well, see it again in maps.
Yeah, but you really want, like, it's already the most efficient strat to get to maps, like, as soon as possible. You really need to convince people to not do that, to spend the time going into the league mechanic and to take longer into maps.
Well, I always tell people to do it, right? I'm like, go have fun. I mean, you play the game to have fun, whatever way that you have fun, right? I think that the community, unfortunately, and I'll say this, I think there's a really big divide between the way that people actually play PoE and the way that Twitch streamers think that people play PoE. Because a lot of the more popular Twitch streamers, the mode of the game that they play is hardcore solo self-found. And that's fine. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But when you play hardcore solo self-found for like 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and that's the only thing that you play, there's going to be a disconnection no matter what. And it's just, I try to tell people to have fun. If you just tell people constantly that they need to do this, they need to do that, they need to min-max, they need to do that, you're going to min-max the fun out of the game. Vast majority of people just go do whatever you think is fun. If min-maxing and pushing and getting to maps in 4 hours is fun for you, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll just echo like one of my friends from hardcore days said to me. Actually, Dawdle, one of the guys who always pushed for the level 7 masters or level 8 masters to sell the master crafts and stuff like that. He always said, you know, it doesn't matter if you take like 2 or 3 hours longer playing through the game, but you're at least having fun, you're experiencing the new thing, and you don't actually like otherwise you push to maps and you get to maps and you're like running your first level 68 map at like character level 70, 72, and then the first time you encounter the leak, or you actually do the leak mechanic when you encounter it, you go in, you don't know what it does, and you die to some random shit because you actually have no idea how the leak mechanic functions. So it always makes sense to at least do some leak mechanic during the acts so that you know what's up by the time you're in maps. But yeah, that's basically it. I think we've depleted ourselves. We've said everything that can be said. Now the ball is in GGG's court, and we have to see
Good talk, boys.
what's happening. Yeah,
have to see if we have a job here in a couple of days.
I was gonna say thank you for your busy league start time and taking the time out of your busy league start stream to appear here on the podcast. But it seems like there wasn't really that much to do in the game that competed with the podcast. No, despite that, I'm just memeing. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on and discuss these things with us.
Alrighty.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. It was
absolutely.
I'm hopeful. I'm full of copium. I know I am. I always am. But
same.
I'm hoping. I'll be checking with hopefully an optimistic outlook. I'm a little nervous, but you know,
I believe.
Yeah.
Despite all of the negativity that I had, I believe.
I'll believe until I don't.
That's
when we stop believing, that's
right.
That's the end.
Right. Right. If I stopped believing, I would have been like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to be on the podcast today. I'm gonna go nap.
Just cute. Don't stop believing.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Good talk.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking
guys.
the time. Thanks to the listeners, guys. If you enjoyed BigDucks and ShakCentral's contribution to discussion, make sure you check them out at twitch.tv/BigDucks, twitch.tv/ShakCentral. And the links were posted in chat. I just posted them again. Just make sure you stay in touch with these awesome creators. Also, of course, as always, follow BalorMage and myself if you want to. There's a great item filter videos being uploaded that no one needs because there's no items in the game.
What if you just upload like a follow-up video, just the sequel where it's just you emptying the folder of all your filters?
Yeah, exactly. This is how you make your loot in PoE actually look good. You just uninstall all the filters and then it's fixed, guys.
Yep.
If you missed the beginning of the podcast, this will be uploaded in full to YouTube and to all podcast platforms and should be available 24 hours from the start of this podcast. That is 9 p.m. GMT tomorrow evening. And we will have another episode in a couple days' time on Saturday when we hope to be able to talk about the first wave of changes to this league. And we're going to be joined by Tenki and Captain Lance. If you type fated.fyi/next into your browser, you will always be forwarded to a countdown timer for the next episode. Right now, it still links to the countdown timer for this episode, but I'm going to change that right now, and then you'll see the countdown timer. Once again, Saturday, 27th of August, 9 p.m. GMT, Fated Connections with Tenki and Captain Lance. Until then, huff that copium and make sure that you give GGG once more the benefit of the doubt, because it's an amazing company, and we've had some amazing patches in this game, and I'm sure they can make things right. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.